friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks Workshop with another episode of Shop Talk. The theme for today is, it's simple, but it's complicated. I'll try to explain how some of these simple things can be a little complicated as we go through this. As usual, we're going to look at some viewer questions and comments, and we've got a few other little topics that we're going to throw in places here and there. But the thought for the day, or let me just say it this way, the thought for this episode is, there is no such thing as darkness. There is only absence of light. Now you ponder that through this video, and at the end I'll try to go into that just a little bit deeper. Woo, woo. Still water runs deep. I wanted to show you a project that will be coming up in a future video series down the road, and I wanted to give you guys a chance to name that video series or even name this instrument. It is a mandolin. It is pretty far along, and I will of course show you how I got it this far along in that video series. And I kind of got ahead of myself here. I glued the peg head overlay on before I actually had the laser cutter cut out the design. But then I got to thinking I don't really have the design for this finalized yet. Though I can still use the laser cutter to cut out the detail, and I think I will have the laser cutter cut out the rose and the name and that sort of thing. And since this is black, I'll just route it out by hand and inlay it in there, and we'll have to fill it a little bit, but being black it's pretty easy to fill where you can't see it. So anyway, it'll look great when we're done, probably look as good or better than any I've ever done when I'm finished. But the question is, what do you want to call this project? This mandolin is going to Canada. I had just thought of, and I hate to throw this out because maybe this is the best name and maybe it isn't. And I hate to bias you guys what I was thinking, but I was thinking of something along the lines of O Canada, the O Canada mandolin or something like that. But I'm totally open, and if the person who's getting this mandolin is watching, they can throw their hat in the ring too. So anybody that wants to shoot us an email, just send it to rosastringworks@gmail.com. You can put your suggestions in the comments as well. We read those too. Either way, we'll get the comment, I'm sure. That's coming up down the road, and you'll see that. And before we get into viewers' comments and questions, I just thought I'd mention that I talked to Ivan, a viewer fan out there in Pennsylvania this week. Ivan, it was good to talk to you, and thank you for watching my videos, man. Hope everything works out for you. One more thing I thought of that I wanted to mention is about the gig to Scotland that was canceled. We have refunded all the tickets, so everyone should have your refund on your tickets. And I'm really proud of everyone that made donations, because they all said to keep the donations, and I was so thankful for that. So I just want to say thank you again for all the donations on that trip. We really appreciate it. It really did help offset a lot of the costs. A lot of the things were not refundable that we had expenses for, and so it did help that very much. That made our losses almost even, so we basically broke even. So thank you very kindly. A shout out to Mike Baird in South Africa. Mike writes, "Hi Jerry, greetings from South Africa. Just to say how much I have enjoyed your videos. You are a fine Christian man. Thanks, Mike Baird." Well, thank you, Mike, and God bless you. The next viewer comment is from Gary Cascone. He goes by Caskey apparently. And he just, basically said he likes my videos, and it inspired him to do some repairs for friends, and he fixed a tailor with a bridge that was broken away and worked on the hump. In addition, Gary says that he used the bridge doctor to get rid of the hump behind the guitar, and that worked great. Yes, I do know about the Bridge Doctor. Yes, I have used the Bridge Doctor on a couple of occasions. You know, I gotta be honest, I guess I'm real picky on some things, and I like the fact that the Bridge Doctor takes out the hump. That part it does perfectly. And I would say if you have a really extreme case, you may want to look into the Bridge Doctor. For me personally, I don't like to use it. I prefer to fix it a different way with some other mechanical means. You do have to pretty much fix it mechanically. It will not just go away by steaming it out or pressing it out. It will come back every time, or at least it does for me. You know, and rather than the Bridge Doctor, I typically put in a larger bridge plate with, you know, a stronger bridge plate, something like that. What I don't like about the Bridge Doctor is that, at least to my ear, it deadens the sound of the guitar. It just doesn't vibrate the same before and after. Where with the repairs that I do, typically I can't really tell the difference, and often it even sounds better because I use a higher grade of bridge pad than what they had in there. So that's the only difference. But I do appreciate it, Gary. Thank you very much for the nice comments, and good luck to you. Hope you are able to get into it and do more of it. Got a letter here from Randy Hale. Randy says, I finally purchased the RSW Nashville number system last night and went through it this morning. And then he says, oh my goodness, exclamation point. This just simplifies everything. When I retired in 2017, I purchased a guitar, my third since I was about 12, and I started taking lessons. I've wanted to play since I was a kid when my mother paid $25 for a small guitar from a pawn shop. I took lessons for a year, learned to play some, and I'm an avid practicer, so to speak. I've attended a couple of songwriting workshops in Nashville with Verlin Thompson and Mary Gaither, I guess, or Gauthier, G-A-U-T-H-I-E-R, if it's spelled correctly there. But more than ever, I really wanted to learn to play the guitar. Your numbering system just made the sky open up. It simplified a lot of the confusion. Well, I do want to just clarify one thing. I didn't invent the number system. I just want to be clear on that. But I do have my own way of thinking about it, which I think clarifies even the number system even more. So that's the difference. Most of you know I'm self-taught. I couldn't explain very well what I was doing until I learned the number system. And then once I learned the number system, I was able to transfer my thoughts to that system and apply my training, if you will. So that's what he's talking about, how it does. It simplifies everything. It takes some of that complication out of there. And then he just adds, thanks for what you do. He signed it, his name, Randy Hale, and then he says, P.S. You worked on my son's Washburn that had a broken neck. Well, I hope it's not broke anymore. Thank you, Randy. I really appreciate the kind words. Good luck to you. Hope you're able to move from that avid practicer to an avid stage performer. Thanks for watching the videos. I should have written down who was asking about cleats and cracks, but the fact is I've had a lot of questions about when to use cleats on cracks and when not to use cleats. And I've had that over the years. People comment, you didn't use a cleat on that. How come you didn't put a cleat on that? To me, it's fairly straightforward, fairly simple, and even, again, just common sense. I use cleats whenever I feel like there's any kind of external pressure or need to use them. If there's no forces pulling something apart or misaligning it, in other words, if the crack just lines up by itself and I don't have to force it into place, then I don't really see a reason to need a cleat as long as I've got a good glue joint and can clamp it tightly and leave it for 24 hours. I think I'm good to go. I think I'm right because in all the years I've been doing this, I don't recall ever having one come back. And you know, as everyone knows or should know, my work is totally guaranteed. I don't have any limitations on it. So to me, you need cleats when something is misaligned, like maybe it's not aligned this way or that way, maybe it's not aligned this way, like you gotta force it together, and then you're just holding it together with the glue and it's wanting to pull apart. Maybe the sides are just too big and they're just pulling it apart. Any kind of stress, if there's some kind of stress on it, like that Martin guitar recently where it had the 2 cracks and, they were one on top, it was laying on top anyway, the bottom line is, but there was no stress on it, if you will. In other words, I couldn't get it apart. I couldn't even open it up. It just wanted to stay where it was. And in addition on that one, the reason I didn't use cleats, and probably the main reason I didn't use cleats on that one, was because if you could imagine what it looked like on the inside, it wasn't level. You've got the 2 good pieces, if you will, with the cracked part on top. The cracked part is setting up here, so there's a cavity under here, if you can imagine what I'm talking about. These are the 2 sides of the guitar. And ordinarily they'd be like this, but in this case they were like that with a cracked piece above it. And so there was nothing flat to glue a cleat to. If you put a cleat in there, it would have been like gluing it on a step. There just wouldn't have been anything to glue it to. Now, you could have made a specialty cleat. Yes, I know. I could have done something crazy and done it. But the point is, we had so much glue in that one, on that particular case, that, it was glue filled, and it was, again, there was no stress trying to pull anything apart. It was all just staying right where it was. And I beveled it so that it had a good mating surface. So I didn't see any reason to try to cleat that at all. And I seriously doubt it'll ever come apart. I really think it's just as strong as the rest of the guitar. The reason that it happened wasn't a stress reason. The reason it happened was a trauma reason. Somebody dropped that guitar, I'm sure, and caused that bust. So there you go. So that's, in a nutshell, that's my whole logic behind cleats. If there's any kind of force on that glue joint, then you probably should cleat it. Otherwise, for the most part, you're kind of wasting your time. Now, you say that, and people will say, all the old violin, makers always cleated all their cracks. And I always wondered about that. I always thought, I wonder why they do that. It doesn't make any sense. Think about it this way, guys. Common sense should rule again. See this down through here? That's 2 pieces of wood glued together. See any cleats in there? No. And I'm not unique on that. The old violin makers didn't cleat their tops or their backs either when they made them in 2 pieces. They didn't cleat them. This is some of the thinnest wood you'll find. Right around in this sweet spot here, it's well under 1/8 of an inch. It's not cleated. They don't generally come apart. Now, I'm not saying they never come apart, because occasionally they do, but generally that's more due to a bad glue up or a bad fit up or something else. But generally speaking, if it's done right and done well, that'll never come apart. And there's no cleats there. Just think about that. So why do you need cleats on just your normal crack unless the crack has stress in it? If it's got stress in it, you need cleats. One more thing about that. When I say stress, what I really mean is you have to force it together, something's not meeting up properly, whatever, and you're having to align it and force it back together. The other area of stress that maybe wouldn't be so obvious would be it's just not a good matchup. In other words, you put it back together and it just doesn't match up good. Then you probably should cleat that as well. Whether there's really any stress there or not, if it doesn't match up good, then you probably do need to cleat it. But generally speaking, if they match up really good and there's no stress, then there's really no reason for a cleat. Hello to Andy Duke, Vancouver Island, British Columbia. Andy writes and says, I'm going to try to surmise it because it's a fairly long note. He says that in February 2017, he started watching the channel. He had an injury to his knee. Guys over 50 shouldn't play soccer, is what he said. Anyway, he injured one of his dogs by accident with a chair or something like that. He said the dog paid him back by knocking his base off the stand. It broke the head right off. He first thought the thing to do is to send it to Jerry. Then he remembered that I am just overloaded with work, and then panic set in. But then he decided that he had seen videos, he'd seen how I do it well enough that he could try it himself. So he fit it all back together. He said it fit really good, and he could barely even feel the crack when he fit it all back together. So he painted on the wood glue and he clamped it up. So I think things turned out. So Andy Duke, thank you for watching my videos. Good luck to you. Hope everything works out for you, man. A shout out to Minim Guitars, and that's M-I-N-I-M Guitars, and that would be Matt. He apparently has been watching my videos for a while. He says he lives in Bristol, and he said that's the original one in Millimeter Land, not the one in Connecticut. Well, I hate to disappoint you, Matt, but I'm not even sure I know where Bristol is in Millimeter Land. I think it's England, but I'm not sure of that. And I didn't look it up, so there you go. You're talking to an old country boy from the Ozarks, Matt. We don't know the whole world, unfortunately. But when you said Bristol, I thought Tennessee. I didn't think of Connecticut either. So there's a Bristol, Tennessee that I have heard of. Now, that's again because I'm a country boy. But anyway, just being silly, he said he started a YouTube channel, and he makes some very unique guitars. He's a good musician, a good singer. I watched one of his videos, and it was real nice. So if you get a chance to check out Minim Guitars, just go to YouTube and type in M-I-N-I-M Guitars, and you'll find his videos and his channel, I'm sure. Matt, thank you very kindly, and I think Matt had asked for some deer antler too, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe that's on the way. One of the comments that I consistently get is, why do you use antler instead of bone? Bone's much easier to come by because of all the slaughterhouses, etc. and so forth. Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, believe it or not, that I started out trying to find bone when I first wanted to make a saddle out of a different material. And believe it or not, I went to a butcher shop local by where I lived and talked to the butcher there, and I couldn't come up with a bone, not a single bone out of a cow that was thick enough to really make a deer antler saddle for a mandolin. Now, lots of bone is big enough to make a saddle for a guitar, so that's not a problem. Even making the nut generally is not a problem because there are places where some of the bone's pretty thick and the nut can be made out of bone. The mandolin saddle is quite a bit thicker yet and longer, and it has to be the full length. So anyway, the bottom line is I couldn't really find any bone easily. So that was my first problem. The second reason that I like to use antler over bone is there's no preparation necessary with the antler. I mean, when you find the antler or get the antler, it's pretty much ready to be used. It's a dried material already, where the bone is more or less green unless you let it dry out in the sun for a while. So you could have smell issues, and you have to take care of the bone. A lot of people show online how they take care of the bone before they use it in an instrument. I don't have to do that, generally speaking, with an antler. That's the second reason. The third reason, and the most important reason for me, being a hunter, I had a lot of it to start with, and also have had more over the years. And people, you find them when you're out walking through the woods. You find antlers just fall off of the deer's head, at certain times of the year, so you can just pick them up off the ground. So they're not terribly hard to come by when you live the lifestyle I live. When you need the quantity I do, that's a different issue, because, having the YouTube channel and selling so many of them and everything, they're hard to come by that way. And you guys have helped me a lot by sending me more antlers. So that's probably the third reason, that they're not that terribly hard to come by. And then the fourth and final reason is I think they even sound maybe just a hair better than the bone does. Now, I can't prove that, and in a blind taste test, like the Coke Pepsi thing, in a blind test, probably wouldn't be able to pick out the difference between an antler and a bone. They sound just about the same. But just think about it this way: the antler is very strong bone because they fight with it. nature makes it really strong. So the antler is a very strong, dense material. I think that allows it to transfer the sound that much better. I'll tell you the real reason at the very beginning why I used Antler and why I even tried it, it was to quit breaking strings. I'm a string breaker like from where they come from. It is not unusual for me to break 3 strings in one evening playing mandolin if I use a wooden saddle, which would be ebony. If I use an ebony saddle, and I've gone back to ebony saddles a couple of times just to prove it to myself, and sure enough, as soon as I put the ebony saddle on, I start popping strings. And I'm sure most of you will say, well, I don't break any strings. Well, I just play hard. That's all I can tell you. I got a heavy right hand. I'm not saying it's the way you should play. It's just the way I play. And I break strings left and right. The moment I put on the Antler saddle, I quit breaking strings. And I mean like quit breaking them just instantly. It just changed everything. And so it saved me time, saved me money. And I thought the sound was just as good. For sure, it gave me more volume. There's no question about that. So those are the only 2 claims I make on those saddles, is that you get more volume and you don't break strings. So thanks for that question. I get it a lot. And again, that was just an anonymous viewer, if you will, because there was lots of times I get that question. Well, friends, this next one, I don't happen to have a name handy on this email. For whatever reason, it didn't print out. I'm in Bennington, Vermont. Bennington shares a border with both New York and Massachusetts. I'm watching you make a bridge for a J45 adjustable. I've been working on guitars and others since the 1970s, mostly as a hobby, sometimes with embarrassing results. I improved after decades of carpentry work. I really enjoy your videos. Thank you for spending the time to film your work. P.S. Stay healthy, and I wish you the same, my friend. I wish I had your name in front of me. I would call you by name. I'm sure Melissa will put it on the screen. Thanks for watching my videos. Well, before we close, friends, I get a lot of comments and questions about this tool. And basically all it really is just a chisel. I just like it. This part here was just something that was in the scrap box, to be perfectly honest. I didn't turn this down or make this part. It was just already in the scrap box that way. It's fine. It could be maybe a little more rounded, might even fit the back of my hand better. But basically I hold it like this, and this blade is just out of one of my little finger planes. And you can see it's the rounded type of blade. I like that because when I'm picking the finish off where I'm going to put a bridge plate, that little rounding thing, I can turn it like this, and just pick little pieces of finish off, where the square flat blade, like on a normal chisel, it seems to dig in more and you can actually cut the wood more. This, I can kind of rock it away from the wood, and it just works good for me. I mean, you could use just a standard old chisel to do the same thing, but this just seemed to work better for me. And then all it is just, a piece of round aluminum stock, and I'm going to say the diameter is about 1 inch. And I just ground off this, ground off that, cut a slot in it. You can see the slot is at a slight angle to the piece. And then I threaded this hole here, just put a screw in to hold the blade in place. And then I rounded off the bottom of this more so that I could get closer to the top of the guitar. And that rounding also keeps me from making any damage or dents or scratches or whatever too. So anyway, that's all it is. It's just a very simple tool, but it works for me, and I really haven't found anything I like better. It's a little bit heavy, if I was being honest. The chunkiness of the weight here, this aluminum, even though aluminum's light, when you get a piece this large, it's a little bit bulky, a little bit heavy. But then on the other hand, that may be why it works good too, because it's easy to control. I would say you can make this piece out of wood. The only difference would be that you'd have might have a little more trouble holding the blade in. The metal works really good for holding the blade in. At the beginning of the video, I said, there is no such thing as darkness. There is only absence of light. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I'll tell you what I mean by that. We get to thinking that everything has a cause and effect. But sometimes it doesn't really happen to have a cause necessarily, or we should think about it in the opposite terms. For instance, there's no force that makes dark happen. In other words, there is a force that makes light happen. There's some sort of energy that has to be created to make light. Without that light, then there is darkness. But nothing really creates the darkness. Think about that when you're fixing things. You know, sometimes it's, you think about the repair and you think, well, what caused this? There is generally a cause. I agree with you 100%. But sometimes the cause is not so much something that happened as perhaps something that didn't happen. For instance, regular maintenance, regular care, attention, leaving something up in an attic for years versus, taking care of it and maybe keeping it in a much more hospitable environment. So, yeah, there was a cause, don't get me wrong, but sometimes the cause is just not doing something, just not taking care. There is no such thing as darkness. There's only absence of light. And I'll give a shout out to James Monroe, and Melissa will insert some pictures of a very unique mandolin that he has. I think he was wanting to send it to me, but unfortunately I am just overbooked at the moment. Haven't been able to accept any instruments for quite a long time. But I thought you'd get a kick out of taking a look at this mandolin, so Melissa will put those pictures up there for you right now. James, I'm sorry I wasn't able to help you with your instrument. I hope you're able to get it fixed. Thank you so much for watching my videos. Melissa, stop the presses. Wait a minute, that's newspapers. Cut! We got something just in. That's not 100% true. This has been here quite a while, actually. I just now getting around to it. But I had to have a reason to interject this clip in here wearing a different shirt. So, this is not Hollywood. We didn't make the set look exactly the same and put me in the exact same position to insert this clip. Anyway, all that to say is a viewer friend sent me some polish. It's called Angel Superior Blend String Instrument Polish. Apparently this has been used by Martin Guitar for quite a while. It comes from Clinton, South Carolina. You can look it up on the web. I'm sure Angel Musical Products, I'm sure is how you would look it up. It is a liquid polish. You've heard me say many times that I'm not a fan of liquid polishes. Now, let me clarify that so it doesn't sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. What I don't like about most liquid polishes is they contain a lot of chemicals. Those chemicals can mess up a lot of plastics. That's why I don't like them. And, you get that on your pick guard. I don't like that. It's not necessarily a bad thing on the instrument itself, on the finish, So there, I want to clarify that point first. Second point I want to clarify is mostly those liquid polishes either come in some kind of a spray bottle or, even an aerosol type, factor. I'm not into any of that because that gets you overspray, it gets it on the pick guard again, and I don't like that. This liquid polish, on the other hand, comes in a bottle where you pour it out, which that's a plus right there. I have not used it at all. I haven't even looked at it. I have no idea about this stuff. So we're going to put it to the test right here and right now. Now, it says to shake well. That's about the only instructions I've read so far. So we will shake it up really well. And I will look up they have instructions here. I will read the instructions and we will follow the instructions here in just one moment. Okay, well, directions basically say to, shake it well, as I mentioned, and that you use 2 cloths. They're recommending a terry cloth type thing, and that's going to be where I'm going to veer off a little bit. I'm going to use my typical blue shop towels. I think they work fine. I don't think that'll cause a negative reaction with their polish. Anyway, it says to use the first towel and you put the polish on there and you rub it in briskly and rub the instrument. You take the second towel, which is the clean one, and you wipe it off. If you still have a lot left over, you're using way too much polish, is what they're saying. They refer to it as a polish, cleaner, and preservative. Angel polish. So let's see what we can do with it. This decent looking guitar here was sent to me by a viewer and told me that I could just have it, and if I could make use of it, we would do something with it. Well, here's the problem. It's a little hard to make use of. Although this did come with it, and this could be glued back. It matches up pretty well, so we could probably put it back together and make use of it. But for now, it's just a good test subject. It's been in the shop for well over a year, I'm sure, and it's been collecting dust and everything. All I did was vacuum it off. I didn't do anything more than that. I can see the light shining on it right there, and it looks like it's a fairly decent finish on there. But on the other hand, under close inspection, you can maybe, if I get the right light correct, there you go, there's a dull spot. I think you can see right where the light is shining there. And there's more dull spots. So there's dullness on here, and it doesn't seem to wipe off with your fingers. There's kind of like almost like a water stain or something that's gone down through here in the finish. Again, I don't know if I can get the camera to pick up. Yeah, I think you can see it a little bit in the reflection there coming down through here. Make the reflection show that. I think you can see it. All right, so anyway, let's just go by the directions and let's just try some of this polish. Like I said, I'm going to use these shop towels. Now this one's got a damp spot on it already from some water. I'll just use this corner of it, which is dry, because I don't recall them saying anything about using a damp cloth or anything like that. Anyway, we're going to shake it up really good one more time. And I shook it with the lid open, so that was my mistake. We're going to put some on here and see what it does. We'll start up here on these stains up in this area, and it says to rub it in briskly. And right there you can see the dirt and grime it removed from the finish. So it is a cleaner. It's yet to be seen how much of a polish and preservative it is, but I can tell you I could feel it getting smoother. Believe it or not, I could actually feel it. So, and I can feel it now. It's very slick in that area. It's not slick at all up here. It's almost like rubbing sandpaper up here. It's very slick here, very smooth. I have to tell you, it looks real nice. Very quick, very easy. I'm gonna go ahead and try a little more. Well, let's go down here to this really bad spot and let's see what it does there. Again, this type of polish, because you can control it really well, and you apply it similarly to the wax, I kind of like this. It's not too bad. All right, again, we're going to rub it really briskly in this area where there was this staining like or messed up finish. And again, you can see the grime it took off of there. And we've got the dry rag, and as I always do, I turn the rag a lot. You should always keep a fresh face on your polishing rag. And, you know, it took away most of it. I'd be lying if I said it took away all of it, but it did take away most of it. There's a little bit right in here yet that's still showing up. I don't know if the camera's going to catch that or not. It's really difficult to tell what the light is doing here. But I think you can see there's still a little bit right there. So let's try it again and see if it'll go away the next application. I would say it helped it a little bit more, but the deep down problem is still there on this. You could easily remove that, I'm sure, with the semi-chrome polish because it has more of an abrasive in it. This probably has a very, very, very mild abrasive in it, I would imagine. That's just a guess. Most polishes typically do have something in them. See if I can get it out with this, or I would say I got it out enough that it would pass almost anybody's inspection. I can still see it there. So just for grins, let's just take the semi-chrome polish and just try it there and see if we get rid of that spot there. Again, it's almost invisible. It would almost be impossible to show it in the camera. So you just have to take my word for that. But I'm going to try that here and see if it does anything. Okay, give it about the same amount of time and then come off. And I have to tell you, it's completely gone. So in that regard, I would say the semi-chrome is probably better for removing really hard stains. You know, something that's, you know, needs a little bit more of an abrasive action. So the semi-chrome, it's hard to beat. I ain't gonna kid you about it. That's hard to beat. This is very good though. You know, this would get my seal of approval. So if anybody out there needs a good polish and you want an easier thing than the wax, you know, this is a two-part process. You polish it up with this, clean up all your messes with this, the scratches and stuff with this. You could go over it with this, would be awesome, or you can go over this with the paste wax, which is what I typically recommend. This is good stuff all by itself. I just got to be, you know, clear about it. It's not always my first choice, but on the other hand, it did a good job. It cleaned up some really nasty stuff here. So as a cleaner polisher, if you want to use something that's a little bit easier to use, I would recommend this stuff, no problem at all. Angel Superior Blend String and Accessory Polish. I promise you, I absolutely get no kickback. There's no reason for me to say anything good. There's no reason for me to say anything bad. I just tell it like it is, and I told you just like it was. So I hope you'll take me at my word. I want to add one more thing, again, just in all honesty and fairness. I hope nobody takes this negatively, especially not the wonderful people that sent me this polish. I'm just telling the straight up truth as I see it. And that is that where it did clean this area up here really well, and it did slick it up quite a bit, it's just my opinion, it doesn't feel quite as slick. You know, I say slicker than a snot on a doorknob is what I say. It doesn't quite feel as slick as it would had I used the Renaissance wax on it. But it still looks nice, and it does seem to have a protection over it. So, you know, I just want to be clear about that, because I do think you get just a little bit more with the semi-chrome combined with the Renaissance wax. But as a one-step process, I would think that might be hard to beat.